Welcome back, Midnight Stories family. Get ready for another heart-touching tale. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Now let's dive into today's story. The dim glow of a street lamp filtered through the half-closed blinds, casting jagged shadows across the living room. The soft hum of distant traffic mixed with the muffled sound of laughter from the house next door. In the corner of the room, Alex stood frozen, his fists clenched at his sides. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he stared at the screen of the baby monitor, its grainy footage revealing a scene that didn't belong to this house, this life. A soft laugh broke the silence, one that Alex knew all too well, Leah's laugh, unmistakably hers. But it wasn't meant for him tonight. The voice that followed, low and smooth, didn't belong to Alex. The camera, angled slightly downward, captured a scene that shattered the stillness of the room. Leah, his wife, leaned too close to a man Alex had only seen in passing at her office holiday parties. The man's hand lingered on her arm, his words inaudible but the intent crystal clear. Alex's breath hitched. He told himself it could be innocent, that he was reading too much into it. But the way Leah tilted her head, the way her fingers grazed the man's wrist, spoke volumes. The air in the room seemed heavier, suffocating as Alex's mind raced through memories of late nights at the office, unexplained text messages, and whispered conversations that stopped when he entered the room. His phone buzzed on the table, shattering the silence and pulling him out of his daze. He hesitated, staring at it, torn between answering and continuing to watch. His hand trembled as he picked it up, his eyes darting back to the screen. What should he do? Confront her? Wait. The questions swirled, each more suffocating than the last. The shadows on the wall seemed to grow, stretching like fingers closing in on him. In that moment, Alex realized one thing. Tonight his life would change forever. As shadows stretched across the room, a secret was about to unfold, one that would change everything. The rain had started hours ago, a steady rhythm against the windows that filled the house with a false sense of calm. In the dim light of their shared bedroom, Alex sat at the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. The smell of Leah's perfume lingered in the air, a soft floral scent he used to love but now felt like a cruel reminder of something slipping away. The air in the room was thick, and the silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional creak of the old wooden floor. Alex had always been a steady man, dependable to a fault. Raised by a single mother who juggled two jobs, he learned early on the value of loyalty and hard work. His days were long, spent managing a small construction business he built from the ground up. The work was grueling, but Alex took pride in it. He wasn't rich, but he was proud of the life he had created for Leah and their 4-year-old son Ethan. For Alex, family was everything, a truth that had guided every decision he ever made. Leah, on the other hand, had grown up in a world vastly different from Alex's. She was the youngest daughter of a well-off family, her childhood marked by country club brunches and family vacations to tropical destinations. Her parents were distant but generous, offering her material comfort in place of emotional closeness. When she met Alex during their college years, his grounded demeanor had been a breath of fresh air, a stark contrast to the superficial relationships she was used to. He was different, solid, reliable, and deeply caring. Their love story had been one for the books, at least at first. Alex proposed under a canopy of stars on a beach in their final year of college. Leah said yes without hesitation, swept away by his earnestness and the promise of a stable, loving life. They married young, full of dreams and optimism, promising to face every challenge together. But the years hadn't been as kind as the promises they made that night. Leah's career as an advertising executive had taken off quickly, her charm and creativity earning her accolades and promotions. Late nights became the norm, and with them came the gradual erosion of the connection she and Alex once shared. While she thrived in the corporate world, Alex found himself increasingly out of place in Leah's orbit. Office parties were filled with people who spoke a language of trends and market strategies he didn't understand, and Alex's casual jeans and work boots felt like a glaring mismatch in a room of tailored suits. It wasn't just the late nights or the inside jokes she shared with her colleagues that made Alex uneasy, it was the distance in her eyes, the way she seemed to be somewhere else even when she was sitting across the dinner table. He tried to bring her back, organizing family movie nights, cooking her favorite meals, even taking weekends off, a rarity for him, to plan small getaways. But Leah's laughter, once spontaneous and full of joy, now felt rehearsed, like an obligation. Ethan, their son, was the glue holding them together. Alex lived for his bedtime stories, the way Ethan's small hands grabbed his face for a kiss goodnight, the way his innocent laughter filled the house with a fleeting warmth. Alex tried to shield Ethan from the tension growing between him and Leah, but even a child as young as Ethan seemed to sense the cracks forming in their once happy home. Leah's colleague Ian was a name Alex heard too often in passing. A rising star in her office, Ian was charismatic and sharp, the kind of man who commanded attention without trying. He was a natural leader, the kind of person who made everyone feel special when he spoke to them. Leah spoke of him with a light in her eyes that Alex hadn't seen directed at him in years. Ian said this, or Ian suggested that, she'd mention casually, not noticing how Alex's jaw tightened each time. Alex had never met Ian, but he already hated him. Alex's insecurities weren't baseless. He wasn't blind to the way Leah had begun to spend more time at work, coming home later than usual with vague excuses about client meetings or project deadlines. She had started dressing differently, more elegant, more polished. She'd switched to wearing the perfume Alex once gave her for their anniversary, a scent she'd abandoned years ago. He tried to brush it off as her adapting to her professional environment, but the gnawing feeling in his gut said otherwise. What Leah didn't know was that Alex had started noticing the little things. The way she laughed at her phone late at night when she thought he was asleep. The sudden, careful password on her phone, a barrier that hadn't existed before. The slight hesitations in her voice when he asked about her day. He'd caught her once, staring out the window with a look he couldn't quite place, guilt, maybe, or longing. Leah herself wasn't as oblivious as Alex thought. She noticed how he had grown quieter, more withdrawn, his questions sharper and his gaze lingering on her a moment too long. She told herself it was just a phase, a rough patch that every couple went through. But deep down, she knew that her relationship with Ian had crossed a line. It had started innocently enough. A shared project, late-night brainstorming sessions that bled into personal conversations. Ian was magnetic, a man who listened to her dreams and frustrations with an intensity that made her feel seen in a way Alex hadn't for years. He complimented her work, her ideas, her presence, making her feel special in ways she hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't love, at least that's what Leah told herself. It was companionship, an escape from the monotony of a marriage that had grown stale. Ian, for his part, had no qualms about where things were heading. He enjoyed the thrill of their secret meetings, the flirtatious glances across the office, and the stolen moments in parking garages. To him, Leah was a challenge, a conquest, a spark in an otherwise mundane routine. He knew the risks, but the excitement was worth it. And so their lives unraveled quietly, piece by piece. Alex, clinging to the hope that he could fix what was broken, began staying up late, waiting for Leah to come home, hoping for a chance to reconnect. Leah, caught between guilt and longing, avoided his eyes and sought refuge in her work. The walls of their home, once filled with laughter and warmth, now echoed with unspoken words and unacknowledged truths. Each of them was waiting for something, a sign, a confession, a confrontation, that would break the unbearable silence. Behind closed doors, their lives were anything but ordinary. The soft light of the street lamps cast an amber glow on the driveway as Leah pulled into the garage. The house was quiet, as it often was these days, with Alex upstairs reading Ethan his favorite bedtime story. The sound of her heels clicking against the tiled floor echoed as she entered, her heart heavy with the weight of secrets. Her phone buzzed in her purse and she hesitated before pulling it out. A single message from Ian, "Miss you already?" She quickly locked the screen and slid the phone back into her bag, her pulse quickening. It had been just a text, but the meaning behind it lingered like the remnants of a storm. Ian had been pushing the boundaries lately, their once innocent exchanges turning into something more daring, more dangerous. Leah told herself she could stop it at any time, but deep down she wasn't sure if she wanted to. Upstairs, Alex sat on the edge of Ethan's bed, his voice steady as he read aloud from a well-worn picture book. But his mind wasn't on the story, it was on Leah. He'd heard the garage door open, the familiar hum of her car pulling in, and he wondered what excuse she would give tonight. Another late meeting? A last-minute client call? The lies were becoming routine, and Alex wasn't sure how much more he could take. Ethan's soft breathing signaled he had fallen asleep, and Alex gently closed the book, brushing a strand of hair from his son's face. He lingered for a moment, finding solace in the innocence of the child who knew nothing of the growing storm between his parents. With a heavy sigh, Alex stood and walked toward the bedroom, bracing himself for another night of half-truths and avoidance. Leah was already there, sitting at the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone. She looked up briefly as Alex entered but quickly averted her gaze. The tension was palpable, the air between them thick with unspoken words. "Long day?" Alex asked, his tone carefully neutral. Leah nodded, not meeting his eyes. "Yeah, just a lot going on at the office." Alex didn't push further. He'd learned that questioning her only led to defensiveness, a wall he couldn't seem to break through. Instead, he walked to the closet, changing into his worn-out sweatpants and a t-shirt. His reflection in the mirror caught his eye, a man weathered by years of labor and worry. He barely recognized the person staring back at him. Meanwhile, Leah's thoughts raced. She hated the way Alex's presence made her feel, guilty, cornered, and yet somehow resentful. She wasn't the villain in this story, she told herself. She had tried to make things work, tried to bridge the gap that had grown between them. But Alex was so set in his ways, so unwilling to understand her world. Ian understood. Ian listened. Ian made her feel alive. The affair had started subtly, with lingering glances and shared laughter during office meetings. Ian had a way of making her feel seen, his compliments hitting all the right notes. He wasn't just charming. He was attentive, picking up on details Alex hadn't noticed in years. The way her hair framed her face when she tied it back. The way her hands moved when she explained an idea. With Ian there was no monotony, no routine, only excitement. But excitement came with risks. Leah knew she was walking a tightrope, her carefully constructed life teetering on the edge. She thought of Ethan, his innocent face and the way he looked at her as though she were his entire world. She thought of Alex, of the sacrifices he'd made to build a life for them. And then she thought of Ian, his smirk and the thrill of being desired in a way she hadn't felt in years. Downstairs, Alex poured himself a glass of water, staring out the kitchen window into the darkness. His mind was a whirlwind of doubts and suspicions. He remembered the moment he'd first felt something shift, the night Leah had come home with a new dress, her cheeks flushed with a glow that had nothing to do with him. He'd brushed it off, convincing himself he was imagining things. But the signs kept piling up. The late nights. The guarded phone. The way she seemed to light up when she talked about work. And then there was the time he'd overheard her on a call, her laughter light and unfamiliar. She'd brushed it off as a client, but Alex wasn't so sure. He'd even considered confronting her, laying it all out and demanding the truth. But fear held him back. Fear of what he might hear, fear of confirming what he already knew deep down. Instead, he kept it inside, the doubt eating away at him like a slow poison. Leah, oblivious to Alex's turmoil, sat on the bed scrolling through her emails. Her heart raced as she saw Ian's name pop up again, this time with a meeting invite for lunch. She stared at the screen, her finger hovering over the accept button. The rational part of her screamed to stop, to think about the consequences, but the pull of the forbidden was too strong. "What are you thinking about?" Alex's voice startled her, pulling her out of her thoughts. "Nothing," she replied too quickly, locking her phone and placing it face down on the nightstand. "Just work stuff." Alex nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly. "You seem distracted lately?" Leah bristled at the comment. "I have a lot on my plate, Alex. You wouldn't understand." There it was again, that subtle jab, the reminder that their worlds were drifting further apart. Alex clenched his jaw, choosing silence over an argument. The gap between them was growing wider, and neither seemed willing to bridge it. In the days that followed, the tension only escalated. Alex began paying closer attention, noticing every detail, the way Leah smiled at her phone, the excuses she gave for her late returns. He even considered following her one evening, desperate to know the truth. But something held him back, a sliver of hope that he was wrong, that Leah was still the woman he'd fallen in love with. For Leah, the stakes had never felt higher. Every text from Ian, every stolen glance at the office, felt like walking a razor's edge. The thrill was intoxicating, but the guilt was suffocating. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that Alex knew more than he let on. And yet she couldn't stop. Ian was a drug and she was addicted. What seemed thrilling in the moment was quickly spiraling out of control. The morning sun broke through the curtains, casting light on a household that felt far darker than it appeared. Alex had been up most of the night, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. He had tried to convince himself that he was overthinking, that the growing distance between him and Leah was just the natural ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. But the signs were undeniable, and the empty space in bed beside him only confirmed his worst fears. Leah had left early that morning, brushing past him with a hurried excuse about an important meeting. She kissed Ethan on the forehead, but Alex barely got a glance. The familiar scent of her perfume lingered in the air, a bittersweet reminder of the woman he thought he knew. He watched her go, the sound of the front door closing behind her feeling far too final. He tried to go about his day, distracting himself with chores and errands, but the thoughts wouldn't leave him. By mid-morning, Alex couldn't sit idle any longer. The phone bill had arrived a day earlier, and while he'd hesitated to open it, the mounting tension had become unbearable. His hands trembled slightly as he scanned through the list of numbers. One stood out immediately: repeated calls, often late at night, lasting far longer than any client discussion should. He wrote the number down, staring at it as if it might hold all the answers. Alex's stomach churned. He knew he was crossing a line, but the suspicion had become a poison, eating away at him. With a deep breath, he dialed the number, his heart pounding as it rang. "Hello?" a voice answered, smooth and self-assured. It was Ian. Alex froze, the sound of Ian's voice sending a jolt through him. He recognized it from the few times he'd met Leah's colleagues at office parties. Ian was always the one cracking jokes, the center of attention, effortlessly charismatic. Hearing him now, Alex felt his suspicions harden into certainty. Without saying a word, he hung up, his grip on the phone tightening. Meanwhile, across town, Leah sat in a cafe, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. She couldn't focus. Her eyes darted around the room, scanning for familiar faces, but none appeared. Ian sat across from her, his easy smile a stark contrast to her nervous energy. "I can't stay long," Leah murmured, her voice barely audible over the hum of conversation. Ian leaned forward, his expression playful. "You always say that," he replied with a smirk. "But here you are." Leah bit her lip, torn between guilt and the magnetic pull of Ian's presence. She felt trapped, caught in a web of her own making. Every stolen moment with Ian felt like a brief escape from the monotony of her life, but the cost was becoming too high. She could feel the walls closing in, the lies piling up faster than she could manage. Back home, Alex was piecing together the fragments of Leah's secret life. The phone call had been the final puzzle piece, confirming what he had been trying so hard to deny. He began paying closer attention, showing up at Leah's office under the guise of dropping off forgotten items or surprising her with lunch. Each visit revealed more than Leah realized: stolen glances with Ian, shared laughter that felt too intimate. Leah, for her part, was struggling to maintain her composure. The secrecy that had once felt thrilling now weighed on her like a chain. Ian was becoming bolder, suggesting weekend trips, texting her late at night with messages that made her heart race and her stomach churn. She knew she needed to end it, but every time she tried, Ian's charm pulled her back in. One evening, Alex decided to follow Leah after she claimed to be working late. He parked a few blocks away from her office, his car idling as he watched the building. His chest tightened as he saw her emerge, her hair styled, her makeup flawless. She wasn't dressed for work. She walked briskly down the street, glancing over her shoulder as if checking for someone. Alex's grip on the steering wheel tightened as Ian appeared, his smile bright as he greeted her. They exchanged a few words before disappearing into a nearby hotel. Alex sat in his car, the weight of what he had just witnessed crashing down on him. His mind raced with questions and emotions: anger, betrayal, heartbreak. He couldn't unsee the image of Leah with Ian, the way she smiled at him in a way she hadn't smiled at Alex in years. For the next few days, Alex couldn't bring himself to confront her. He rehearsed the conversation in his head 100 times, but the words never felt right. Leah, sensing his unease, began to unravel herself. She noticed the way he watched her, the tension in his voice, the way his presence seemed to suffocate her. The tipping point came unexpectedly. One evening, Leah was at a bar with colleagues when Ian showed up unannounced. His presence was risky, but Ian thrived on the thrill of their affair. They shared a quiet corner, their conversation laced with flirtation until Leah froze. Alex's best friend Mark had just walked in. Mark's eyes landed on Leah and Ian almost immediately. his brow furrowed, confusion giving way to recognition. He didn't say anything, but his expression was enough to make Leah's stomach drop. She knew it was only a matter of time before this moment reached Alex. The next morning Mark called Alex. "Hey man," he began hesitantly. "I don't know how to say this, but I saw Leah last night. She wasn't alone." Alex felt the world tilt beneath him. Though he had suspected for weeks, hearing it confirmed by someone else was a blow he wasn't prepared for. That evening, Leah came home to find Alex waiting in the living room, his expression unreadable. The tension in the air was suffocating, the silence heavier than words. "Leah," Alex began, his voice steady but low. "We need to talk." Her heart raced as she sat across from him, her mind scrambling for excuses, explanations, anything to deflect the confrontation she had been dreading. But Alex's tone told her this time there was no escape. With every move, the walls seemed to close in tighter. The moment Leah stepped into the living room, she felt it, a weight, an atmosphere thick with unspoken words. Alex sat in the armchair by the window, his posture rigid, his gaze piercing. The evening light cast long shadows across his face, making him appear older, more worn. His jaw was tight, his hands clasped together as though holding back an eruption. "Leah," he began, his voice steady but unnervingly low. "We need to talk." Her stomach twisted into knots. She hesitated, placing her bag on the side table as if delaying the inevitable would somehow save her. "Sure," she replied, forcing a calmness she didn't feel. "What's on your mind?" Alex's eyes met hers, and for the first time in years, Leah felt as though he could see straight through her. He didn't answer immediately, letting the silence stretch until it became unbearable. "Who is he?" Alex's words landed like a hammer blow. Leah's heart sank. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her mind scrambling for an escape. "What are you talking about?" she said, her voice shaky. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," Alex said sharply, his tone cutting through her denial. "I know about Ian. I've known for weeks, Leah. Stop pretending." Her knees buckled slightly and she sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. "Alex, Don't," he interrupted, his voice cracking under the strain of holding back his anger. "Don't lie to me anymore." Leah's eyes filled with tears. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind, but nothing had prepared her for the raw emotion in Alex's voice, the mixture of pain and betrayal etched across his face. "I never wanted to hurt you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Alex laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "You never wanted to hurt me? Leah, you've been lying to me for months. Do you have any idea what it's been like? The sleepless nights, the constant doubt, wondering what I did wrong?" "It wasn't about you," Leah blurted out, the words tumbling from her lips before she could stop them. "It's not your fault, Alex. I felt invisible." "Invisible?" Alex's voice rose, his frustration spilling over. "How could you feel invisible, Leah? I've done everything for this family. I've worked my hands to the bone to give you and Ethan a good life. And this is how you repay me?" Tears streamed down Leah's face as she tried to explain. "I didn't plan for this to happen. It started with work, late nights, long conversations. He made me feel alive again." "Alive?" Alex repeated, his voice dripping with disbelief. "So what? I wasn't enough for you? Our family wasn't enough?" Leah looked down, unable to meet his gaze. "It's not that simple." "It is that simple," Alex shot back, standing abruptly. "You made a choice, Leah. You chose him over us." The room fell silent, the tension between them like a physical force. Leah wiped her tears, her mind racing with regret and shame. "Alex, I'm sorry. I don't know how it got this far." Alex turned away, running a hand through his hair. "Sorry doesn't fix this. Sorry doesn't erase what you've done." He paused, his shoulders slumping. "I saw you, Leah. At the hotel. With him?" Leah's breath caught. The confession was a knife to her heart, cutting through the last shred of her denial. You followed me?" "Of course I did," Alex yelled, spinning around to face her. "Do you know how humiliating it is to watch your wife walk into a hotel with another man? To see her smile at him the way she used to smile at me?" Leah's voice trembled as she tried to explain. "I never meant for you to find out like that." "Find out like what? That you've been sneaking around behind my back? That our entire marriage has been a lie?" Alex's voice cracked, and for the first time, Leah saw the tears in his eyes. "I still love you," Leah said desperately, her words feeling hollow even as she spoke them. I made a mistake, Alex. A terrible mistake. Alex let out a bitter laugh. Love. Don't talk to me about love, Leah. Love doesn't do this. Love doesn't destroy a family. The sound of tiny footsteps interrupted their argument. Ethan appeared in the doorway, clutching his favorite stuffed animal. Mommy? Daddy? Why are you yelling? Both Alex and Leah froze, their anger momentarily replaced by guilt. Alex crouched down, forcing a smile. Hey buddy. Everything's okay. Go back to bed, alright? Ethan looked unconvinced but nodded, retreating to his room. As soon as he was gone, the weight of their argument settled back in. Alex sighed deeply, his shoulders sagging. I don't even know where we go from here. Leah reached out, but Alex stepped back, the distance between them palpable. I'll end it, she said quietly. With Ian. I'll never see him again. Alex's expression was unreadable. And what am I supposed to do with that, Leah? Just pretend like this never happened? I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, Leah pleaded, her voice cracking. I'll go to counseling. I'll do anything, Alex. Please. Alex stared at her for a long moment, his emotions warring inside him. This isn't something you just fix, Leah. Trust doesn't come back overnight. And right now, I don't even know if it can. Leah broke down, sobbing into her hands. Alex turned away, his heart heavy. He wanted to comfort her, to hold her, but the betrayal was too fresh, too raw. As the night wore on, they sat in silence, the reality of their shattered marriage hanging over them like a storm cloud. Alex finally stood, his voice hollow. I'm sleeping on the couch tonight. Leah didn't stop him, knowing she had no right. As he walked away, she whispered, I'm sorry, but the words felt meaningless in the face of what she had done. In one moment, everything they thought they knew was shattered. The morning after their argument, the house felt eerily quiet. The usual morning chaos, Ethan's laughter, Leah's hurried movements, Alex's clinking coffee mug, was absent. Alex sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of him. His mind was racing, replaying every moment of their conversation. His anger had subsided somewhat, replaced by a hollow ache that settled deep in his chest. Leah had woken early, her eyes puffy from a night of crying. She moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding Alex's gaze. The weight of what she'd done was suffocating, and the thought of facing Ethan, innocent and blissfully unaware, made her stomach churn. When Ethan bounded into the kitchen, his cheerful voice cut through the tension like a knife. Mommy, Daddy, can we go to the park today? Leah forced a smile. Not today, sweetheart. Maybe another time. Ethan frowned, his little face scrunching in disappointment. Why not? You said we could. Alex looked at Leah, his eyes hard but filled with an underlying sadness. Ethan, Mommy and Daddy need to talk today. How about I take you to the park tomorrow? Ethan's eyes lit up, but Leah's heart sank. She knew what Alex's words meant. There was no avoiding the fallout anymore. Later that day, Alex sat in the car outside Leah's office. He hadn't planned on being there, but the unresolved anger bubbling beneath the surface had driven him to act. He wanted answers, not just from Leah but from Ian. Leah had promised to end the affair, but Alex couldn't shake the feeling that Ian might try to linger in her life. The thought made his blood boil. As he watched employees stream out of the building, his grip tightened on the steering wheel. Finally, he saw Ian, a confident stride, a casual smirk, and a demeanor that screamed arrogance. Without thinking, Alex stepped out of the car and crossed the street. Ian, he called, his voice sharp and commanding. Ian turned, surprised to see Alex approaching. Alex, right? Ian said, his tone casual, almost mocking. Alex stopped a few feet away, his fists clenched. I don't know what kind of man thinks it's okay to destroy another person's family, but you need to stay away from Leah. Do you hear me? Ian raised an eyebrow, his smirk unfaltering. I don't think Leah needs you speaking for her. She's more than capable of making her own decisions. Alex's jaw tightened. You think this is a game? You've wrecked my life, my marriage, and you're standing here acting like it doesn't matter. Ian shrugged, his calm demeanor only fueling Alex's rage. What Leah and I had wasn't about you, Alex. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to her, she wouldn't have looked elsewhere. The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. Before he realized what he was doing, he grabbed Ian by the collar, shoving him against the nearest wall. You don't get to talk about my marriage, Alex growled, his voice low and dangerous. Ian didn't resist, his smirk finally fading. You think this will fix anything? Go ahead, hit me. It won't change the fact that she came to me, not you. Alex's fist hovered in the air, trembling with the weight of his anger. But then Ethan's face flashed in his mind, his innocent, trusting eyes. With a shaky breath, Alex let Ian go, stepping back. Stay away from her, he said through gritted teeth before walking away. At home, Leah was pacing the living room, her anxiety growing with each passing minute. When Alex finally walked through the door, his expression unreadable, she braced herself. Where were you? She asked cautiously. Talking to Ian, Alex replied bluntly. Leah's heart sank. Alex, I told you I would end it. You didn't need to. I needed to look him in the eye, Alex interrupted, his tone cold. I needed to make sure he understood what he's done. Leah swallowed hard, tears welling in her eyes. I'm sorry, Alex. I don't know how to make this right. Alex sat down heavily on the couch, his head in his hands. I don't either, Leah. I don't know if we can. The weight of his words hung in the air, a stark reminder of how far they had fallen. Over the next few weeks, the tension between Alex and Leah only grew. Alex threw himself into work, staying late to avoid coming home. Leah tried to repair the damage, suggesting counseling, but Alex's response was always the same. I'm not ready. Ethan began to notice the shift. Why doesn't Daddy eat dinner with us anymore? He asked one night, his big eyes full of confusion. Leah forced a smile, her heart breaking. Daddy's just busy with work, sweetheart. He loves you very much. But Ethan wasn't satisfied with her answer. Did I do something wrong? Leah's composure cracked and she pulled him into a tight hug. No, baby. You didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault. One evening, Leah received a text from Ian. Can we talk? Just once? I need closure. She stared at the message, her hands shaking. She knew responding would only make things worse, but the temptation lingered. She deleted the message, but the damage was already done. Alex had seen the notification pop up on her phone. You're still talking to him? Alex demanded, his voice rising. No, I'm not, Leah said quickly. He texted me but I didn't reply. I swear. Alex's anger boiled over. You think I can just trust you now? After everything? Leah's tears fell freely. I'm trying, Alex. I'm trying to fix this. Why can't you see that? Because every time I look at you, all I see is the woman who betrayed me, Alex shot back. I want to forgive you, Leah, but I don't know if I can. The days turned into weeks and the cracks in their marriage only deepened. Friends and family began to notice the strain, their once happy facade crumbling under the weight of their secrets. Ethan, too, became quieter, sensing the tension but unable to understand it. Alex began to confide in Mark, his best friend. I want to move on, Alex admitted one night over drinks. But every time I try, I feel like I'm betraying myself. Mark nodded solemnly. Forgiveness isn't easy, Alex. But holding on to anger isn't either. You need to figure out what's worth fighting for. Leah, meanwhile, sought solace in her sister, who didn't mince words. You messed up, Leah. Big time. But if you want Alex to stay, you need to prove to him every single day that you're worth it. Leah took her sister's advice to heart, trying to rebuild the trust she had broken. She deleted Ian's number, blocked him on all platforms, and threw herself into repairing her relationship with Alex and Ethan. But Alex remained distant, his walls impenetrable. One night, after another tense dinner, Alex sat on the porch, staring out at the dark sky. Leah joined him hesitantly, sitting a few feet away. Do you think we'll ever be okay again? She asked softly. Alex didn't answer immediately. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the woman he had fallen in love with all those years ago. I don't know, he admitted. But I think I want to try. Leah's breath hitched. That's all I'm asking for. The cost of their choices was now impossible to ignore. The tension in the house reached a breaking point on a cold Saturday evening. Alex had been distant all week, retreating to the garage under the pretense of fixing a leak in the roof of his old truck, though the truck was fine. Leah had spent the week meticulously deleting Ian's texts and burying herself in apologies, cooking meals Alex barely touched, and reading bedtime stories to Ethan with a forced cheerfulness that even a 4-year-old could sense. That evening, Alex had come inside after hours in the garage, his face pale and his hands shaking. He'd been staring at the small silver wedding band on his finger, a token of a promise that felt like a lifetime ago. As he stepped into the living room, Leah stood, hesitant, like a child waiting to be scolded. "We need to settle this," Alex said, his voice calm but heavy. Leah's heart sank. The weight of his tone suggested this wasn't another argument. This was it. "Alex, I'm doing everything I can. I've blocked him. I haven't spoken to him since I caught you?" Alex cut in, his words sharp. Leah flinched. "Yes. I ended it. I'm trying to make it right." "Trying to make it right? You think saying sorry and blocking him on your phone erases what you did?" Alex's voice rose, his frustration spilling over. "You broke us, Leah. You broke me." Leah's eyes brimmed with tears. "I know I did. And I hate myself for it. But I can't change the past. All I can do is prove to you that I still love you. That I'm still your wife." Alex laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Love? Don't talk to me about love, Leah. Love doesn't humiliate your husband. Love doesn't destroy a family." Before Leah could respond, the sound of the doorbell shattered the argument. They both froze, exchanging wary glances. It was almost 8 p.m. Who would be visiting at this hour? Alex walked to the door and opened it. There stood Ian, casual as ever, his hands tucked into his pockets. "Ian," Alex said, his voice low and dangerous. Leah rushed to the door, her face draining of color. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. Ian smirked. "Relax, I just came to talk. I wanted to make sure we're all clear on where we stand." Alex stepped forward, his body tense, placing himself between Leah and Ian. "You've got a lot of nerve showing up here. You think you can just walk into my house after everything you've done?" "Alex, please," Leah whispered, tugging at his arm. Ian held up his hands, feigning innocence. "Look, I didn't come here to fight. I just thought you should know that Leah and we had something special. And maybe she's trying to fix things now, but I don't think she's really over it. Are you, Leah?" Leah's breath caught. "Ian, stop. This isn't your place." Alex's eyes burned with fury. "You need to leave. Now." But Ian didn't move. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Do you really think she'll be happy with you again? After everything?" The room felt like it was about to explode. Alex's fists clenched at his sides, his body trembling with restrained rage. Finally he snapped. He lunged at Ian, grabbing him by the collar and shoving him backward. Ian stumbled, hitting the doorframe, his smirk replaced by genuine fear. "Get out!" Alex roared, his voice echoing through the house. Ian pushed himself up, brushing off his shirt. "You're pathetic, Alex. No wonder she came to me." Before Alex could react again, Leah stepped between them, her voice firm and trembling. "Enough. Ian, leave. You've done enough damage." Ian hesitated, then shrugged. "Suit yourself." He turned and walked out, the sound of his footsteps fading into the night. As Alex slammed the door shut, the silence that followed was deafening. Leah reached for him, but he stepped back, his eyes filled with hurt and betrayal. "Why did you ever let him into our lives?" Alex asked, his voice breaking. Leah didn't have an answer. Tears streamed down her face as she watched Alex walk away, disappearing into the garage once again. The days that followed were a blur. Ian's visit had reopened every wound, deepened every doubt. Alex avoided Leah entirely, leaving early and coming home late. Leah, desperate to rebuild even a shred of trust, poured her energy into Ethan and the home, though the emptiness in her chest grew with every passing day. One night, Alex came home to find Leah sitting at the dining table, a stack of papers in front of her. She looked up, her face pale and resolute. "What's this?" Alex asked, his voice cautious. Leah pushed the papers toward him. "Divorce papers. If you want out, Alex, I won't stop you. I'll sign them." Alex froze, staring at the papers. He hadn't expected this. For weeks, he had wrestled with the idea of leaving, but now that it was in front of him, he felt paralyzed. "I don't want a divorce," Alex said finally, his voice quiet. Leah's eyes filled with tears. "Then what do you want?" "Because I can't keep living like this. The guilt is eating me alive, Alex. And I can see the pain in your eyes every time you look at me. I don't want Ethan to grow up in a house full of resentment." Alex sat down across from her, his shoulders slumped. "I don't know what I want, Leah. I'm angry. I'm hurt. And I don't know if I can ever trust you again." "Then let me earn it back," Leah said, her voice trembling. "Give me the chance to prove to you that I'm still the woman you fell in love with." Alex looked at her for a long time, his emotions a storm of anger, love, and uncertainty. Finally he nodded. All right. But this is the last chance, Leah. No more lies. No more secrets. Leah reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. No more lies, she promised. As the truth emerged, there was no turning back. The weeks that followed Ian's abrupt departure and the raw confrontation in the house were some of the hardest Alex and Leah had ever faced. Their marriage, once a foundation of love and trust, now felt like a fragile structure, teetering on the edge of collapse. Every conversation was a careful negotiation, every shared glance a test of their ability to move forward. And yet, amidst the tension, there were glimmers of something unexpected: hope. Alex took time off work, a decision that surprised Leah. For years, he had buried himself in his construction business, using the physical labor to escape any emotional burden. But now he seemed intent on facing their problems head-on. He spent his mornings taking Ethan to the park, his afternoons fixing things around the house, and his evenings sitting silently on the porch, lost in thought. Leah watched him from the window one night, her heart heavy with regret. She could see the weight he carried, the struggle etched into every line on his face. But she also saw the man she had fallen in love with, the man who had proposed to her under the stars, who had held her hand through every challenge, who had always chosen her. She wanted to be worthy of that man again, but she knew it wouldn't come easily. One Saturday morning, Leah suggested a family outing to the botanical gardens, a place they had loved when they were first married. Ethan's excitement was infectious, and even Alex, though reserved, agreed to come along. The day was crisp and sunny, the kind of day that made everything feel possible. As they walked through the gardens, Ethan darted ahead, chasing butterflies and pointing out flowers. Alex and Leah trailed behind, their steps awkwardly synchronized. The silence between them was heavy, but it wasn't hostile. It was the kind of silence that spoke of unspoken questions, tentative hope, and the beginnings of reconciliation. "I've missed this," Leah said softly, breaking the quiet. Alex glanced at her, his expression guarded. "Missed what?" "Us. Being together as a family. Feeling like we're okay." Her voice faltered, but she pressed on. "I know we're not there yet, but today feels different. Like maybe we could be." Alex didn't respond immediately. He watched Ethan, his son's laughter echoing through the gardens, and felt a pang of longing for the life they had before everything fell apart. "It's going to take time, Leah," he said finally. "A lot of time." "I know," she said, her voice steady. "And I'm not going anywhere." That evening, as Alex tucked Ethan into bed, his son asked a question that caught him off guard. "Daddy, are you and Mommy happy again?" Alex paused, his hand frozen mid-motion as he pulled the blanket over Ethan. "Why do you ask, buddy?" Ethan shrugged, his small face serious. "You don't smile as much anymore. And sometimes Mommy cries when she thinks I'm not looking." Alex's chest tightened. "We're working on it, Ethan. Mommy and I both love you very much, and we're doing everything we can to make sure you're happy." "Okay," Ethan said, his voice drowsy. "I just want us to be a happy family." Alex stayed by his bedside long after Ethan had fallen asleep, the weight of his son's words settling over him. He realized then that it wasn't just about him and Leah, it was about Ethan too. Whatever decision he made, it would shape his son's understanding of love, trust, and forgiveness. Leah's commitment to earning back Alex's trust was unwavering. She started therapy not just for herself but for their relationship. She wanted to understand why she had allowed herself to stray, to confront the parts of herself she had avoided for so long. She invited Alex to join her for couples sessions, though he hesitated at first. The first session was tense. The therapist encouraged them to speak openly about their feelings, and the floodgates opened. Alex's anger, Leah's guilt, their shared grief, it all spilled out raw and unfiltered. But amidst the pain, there were moments of clarity, of connection. They began to see each other not as enemies but as two people trying to heal. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, Alex spoke the words Leah had been waiting to hear. "I don't want to lose you." Her breath hitched. "You won't. I promise." "It's not that simple, Leah. I'm still angry. I still don't trust you. But I also know that I love you. And I'm willing to try." Tears filled her eyes as she reached for his hand. "That's all I want. A chance to prove to you that I can be better." Alex squeezed her hand, his grip firm but not yet tender. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Months passed and the wounds in their relationship began to heal, though slowly and with effort. They rebuilt their routines, prioritizing family time and communication. There were setbacks, arguments that reopened old wounds, moments of doubt that felt insurmountable. But there were also victories, laughter at the dinner table, shared memories that reminded them of who they used to be, and new memories that gave them hope for the future. Leah's relationship with Ian became a distant memory, a shadow that no longer loomed over their lives. She deleted every trace of him, not because Alex asked her to, but because she wanted to. She had no interest in looking back. Alex, too, began to let go of his anger. It didn't happen all at once, but little by little, he found himself softening. He saw Leah's efforts, her sincerity, and her unwavering determination to rebuild what she had broken. And though the scars remained, they became a part of their story, a reminder of how far they had come. One evening, as they sat together watching Ethan play in the yard, Alex turned to Leah. "Do you remember the night I proposed?" Leah smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Of course I do. Under the stars on that little hill by the lake." Alex nodded. "I meant it when I said I wanted forever with you." "I know," Leah said, her voice trembling. "And I meant it too." Alex looked at her, his gaze steady. "Then let's make forever mean something." Leah reached for his hand, her heart swelling with gratitude. "We already are." As silence fell, the echoes of their choices lingered in the air, but so did the promise of a new beginning. The evening was quiet, the kind of stillness that made every creak of the floor and every sigh seem amplified. Alex was in the garage, tinkering with an old box of tools he had inherited from his father. It was a ritual of sorts, a way to clear his mind and sort through his thoughts. Tonight, though, his mind was restless. As he shuffled through the box, his hand brushed against something unfamiliar, a small, folded letter wedged between two rusted wrenches. Curiosity got the better of him, and he unfolded the yellowed paper. The handwriting was unmistakable, Leah's. But the date at the top was from years ago, long before their troubles began. Alex sat down on the cold garage floor, his heart pounding as he began to read. The letter. "Alex, I don't know if I'll ever give this to you. Maybe I'm just writing it for myself, to let these feelings out so they don't eat me alive. But if you're reading this, it means I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. You've always been my rock, my safe place, the one who makes me feel like I'm enough just as I am. But lately I felt lost. Not because of you, you've been everything I could ask for. It's me. I don't know who I am anymore outside of being your wife and Ethan's mom. I feel like I'm drowning in expectations, some of them real, some of them ones I've put on myself. There's something I need to tell you. Before we got married, there was someone else. It wasn't serious, not like what we have. But it ended in a way that left me unsure of myself. He made me feel small, like I wasn't enough. When I met you, you were everything he wasn't, kind, steady, reliable. You made me feel whole again. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, I wonder if I ever truly dealt with the scars he left behind. I'm terrified that one day, those insecurities will creep into our life together and ruin what we've built. You deserve so much better than that, Alex. You deserve someone who can love you without reservation, without these shadows in her heart. I don't know if I have the courage to tell you all of this face to face. But if you're reading this, I hope it's because I've finally found the strength to be honest with you. And I hope you'll still see me the way you always have, as someone worth loving. Leah. Alex sat frozen, the letter trembling in his hands. He felt a wave of emotions, shock, confusion, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of empathy. Leah had never mentioned anyone before him, and though the letter wasn't recent, it cast her recent actions in a new light. The affair with Ian wasn't just about him or their marriage, it was about something deeper, a wound Leah had been carrying long before they met. He folded the letter carefully and slipped it into his pocket. His mind was spinning with questions, but one thing was clear. He needed to talk to Leah. That night, Alex found Leah in the living room, curled up on the couch with a blanket and a book. She looked up as he entered, her eyes wary. "Is everything okay?" she asked, sensing his tension. Alex didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled the letter from his pocket and held it out to her. "I found this in the garage," he said quietly. Leah's eyes widened as she recognized the paper. Her face paled and she set the book aside, her hands trembling as she took the letter. "I didn't know this still existed," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" Alex asked, his voice calm but heavy with emotion. About him. About how you were feeling. Leah clutched the letter to her chest, tears welling in her eyes. Because I was ashamed. I thought if I buried it deep enough, it wouldn't matter. That I could just move on and be the person you needed me to be. Alex sat down across from her, his expression softening. Leah, I've been angry for so long, angry at you, at Ian, at everything. But reading this, it makes me realize that this isn't just about what happened with him. It's about you not feeling like you're enough. And that breaks my heart. Leah's tears spilled over as she nodded. I've been carrying this weight for so long, Alex. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I couldn't. And then Ian came along and he made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in years. But it wasn't real. It was a distraction, a way to avoid dealing with what was really wrong. Alex reached out, taking her hand in his. I wish you had told me sooner. I wish I could have helped you carry this. I didn't want to burden you, Leah said, her voice trembling. You've always been so strong, so steady. I didn't want you to see me as weak. You're not weak, Leah, Alex said firmly. You're human. And I'm not perfect either. I should have seen that you were struggling. I should have asked more questions, tried harder to connect. They sat in silence for a long moment, the weight of their shared pain hanging in the air. But for the first time in months, there was also a sense of understanding, a small flicker of hope. Over the following weeks, the letter became a turning point for Alex and Leah. They began to unpack not just the affair, but the deeper issues that had been simmering beneath the surface for years. Alex encouraged Leah to talk more openly about her past, and in doing so, he began to understand the insecurities that had driven her actions. Leah, in turn, began to see Alex not just as her husband, but as a partner in her healing. She stopped trying to hide her pain and started allowing him to share in it. It wasn't an easy process. There were moments of anger, tears, and doubt. But there were also moments of connection, of seeing each other for who they truly were, flaws and all. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, Alex turned to Leah. I'm glad I found that letter, he said. Not because of what it revealed, but because it reminded me of something. What's that? Leah asked, her voice soft. That we're stronger together, Alex said. Even when it's hard. Even when it feels impossible. We can get through anything as long as we don't give up on each other. Leah smiled through her tears, her heart swelling with gratitude. I'll never give up on us, Alex. I promise. The past has a way of creeping back even when buried deep. But sometimes, it's in confronting the past that we find the strength to build a better future. It had been weeks since Alex and Leah began the slow process of repairing their fractured marriage. There were days when progress felt tangible, shared laughter at dinner, a glance that lingered just a little longer. But there were also days when the weight of what had happened felt unbearable. Trust was fragile, and rebuilding it required more patience than either of them had ever known. One evening, as Alex locked up the garage after finishing a repair on the truck, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. The number was unfamiliar, and for a moment he considered ignoring it. But something compelled him to answer. Hello? Alex said, his tone cautious. Alex, this is Ian, the voice on the other end said. Alex froze, his grip tightening on the phone. What do you want? Ian sighed, his tone uncharacteristically subdued. I need to talk to you. Just hear me out. There's nothing you could say that I want to hear, Alex replied coldly. Look, I get it. You hate me, Ian said. But this isn't about me. It's about Leah. Alex hesitated, torn between his anger and his curiosity. What about her? I think she's hiding something from you, Ian said. Something bigger than what you already know. Alex's stomach turned. What are you talking about? Meet me tomorrow. I'll explain everything, Ian said. There's a cafe on Elm and 5th. Noon. Before Alex could respond, Ian hung up, leaving him with more questions than answers. He stood there in the quiet garage, his mind racing. Was Ian playing games? Or was there more to Leah's story than she had let on? The next day, Alex arrived at the cafe, his jaw tight and his fists clenched. He spotted Ian sitting at a corner table, a cup of coffee in front of him. The sight of him made Alex's blood boil, but he forced himself to remain calm. Ian looked up as Alex approached, gesturing to the empty seat across from him. Thanks for coming, Ian said. I'm not here for pleasantries, Alex said, sitting down. Say what you need to say. Ian leaned forward, lowering his voice. Before Leah and I got involved, she told me something. Something that stuck with me. I didn't think much of it at the time, But after everything that's happened, I thought you should know. Alex's jaw tightened. Spit it out. Ian hesitated as if weighing his words. She mentioned someone from her past, a guy she was with before she met you. She said he hurt her. Not physically but emotionally. She said he made her feel like she was worthless. Alex frowned. This wasn't new information. Leah had admitted as much in the letter he'd found. I already know about him, Alex said. What's your point? The point, Ian said, leaning closer, is that he's back in her life. The words hit Alex like a punch to the gut. What are you talking about? I saw her with him, Ian said. A few weeks ago. They were talking outside her office. I don't know what it was about, but it didn't look like a casual conversation. Alex's heart raced. He wanted to dismiss Ian's words as lies, but the doubt had already taken root. Why are you telling me this? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. Ian sighed. Because as much as I hate to admit it, I still care about Leah. And if there's something going on, you deserve to know. Alex stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. If you're lying? I'm not, Ian said firmly. Check for yourself if you don't believe me. Alex left the cafe without another word, his mind a whirlwind of anger, doubt, and fear. If what Ian said was true, it changed everything. That evening, Alex confronted Leah. She was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, when he walked in, his expression unreadable. Who is he? Alex asked, his voice steady but cold. Leah looked up, startled. What are you talking about? The guy from your past. The one who made you feel like you weren't enough, Alex said. Is he back in your life? Leah's face paled and she set down the knife she was holding. Alex, where is this coming from? Ian, Alex said bluntly. He told me he saw you with him. Outside your office. Leah's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to make things worse. So it's true, Alex said, his voice rising. You've been talking to him? It wasn't like that, Leah said quickly. He reached out to me. He wanted to apologize for the way he treated me. I told him I wasn't interested in rehashing the past and that was it. I swear. Alex's anger flared. Do you have any idea how that looks? How it feels to hear this from Ian of all people? Leah's tears spilled over as she stepped closer. Alex, please. I'm not hiding anything. I didn't meet with him behind your back. I didn't do anything wrong. Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was scared, Leah admitted. I was scared you'd think I wasn't over him. But I am, Alex. I've been over him for years. You're the only one I want. The only one I've ever wanted. Alex searched her eyes for any hint of deceit, but all he saw was fear and remorse. He sighed, his shoulders sagging. I want to believe you, Leah. But after everything, it's hard. Leah reached for his hand, her grip firm. Then let me prove it to you. Let me show you that you can trust me again. Help can come from the most unlikely places, or so it seemed. The evening stretched on like an eternity, every tick of the clock a painful reminder of the decisions that had yet to be made. The living room felt both cavernous and stifling, as if the tension between Alex and Leah had become a physical presence. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows, but inside the house, silence ruled. Alex sat on the edge of the couch, his elbows resting on his knees, staring at a photo of their wedding day on the mantel. It was a candid shot, the two of them laughing, eyes locked as if no one else in the world existed. He could barely recognize the people in the photo. How had they gone from that moment to this? Leah, sitting across from him on the armchair, watched him carefully. She wanted to say something to bridge the growing chasm between them, but every word she considered felt inadequate. The truth hung heavy in the air, unspoken but palpable. I've been thinking, Alex finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was low, measured, as though he were afraid of the words spilling out too quickly. Leah straightened, her heart pounding. About what? About us, Alex replied, his eyes still fixed on the photo. About whether we can come back from this? Leah's breath caught. And? Alex turned to face her, his expression unreadable. I don't know. Part of me wants to pack a bag and walk away, leave all this behind. But another part of me can't stop thinking about Ethan, about what this would do to him. And then there's this small, stubborn piece of me that remembers why I fell in love with you in the first place. Leah's eyes filled with tears. Alex, I know I've broken your trust. I know I've hurt you in ways I can't even begin to understand. But I love you. I've always loved you. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you if you'll let me. Alex let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. It's not that simple, Leah. You don't just get to say you're sorry and expect everything to go back to the way it was. I don't expect that, Leah said, her voice trembling. I know it's going to take time. But Alex, if there's even a small part of you that wants to try, please, let's try. For Ethan. For us. Alex's inner battle. As the night wore on, Alex found himself unable to sleep. He sat in the garage, the cold air biting at his skin, staring at the tools he hadn't touched in days. His mind was a battlefield, thoughts clashing and colliding with no resolution in sight. He thought about Ethan, his bright eyes and boundless energy. How would his son understand the cracks in their family? How would he explain that sometimes love wasn't enough? But then he thought about Leah, about the pain in her eyes when she begged for forgiveness. Could he trust her again? Could he ever look at her without seeing Ian, without feeling the sting of betrayal? The memories of their life together flooded his mind. The day they brought Ethan home from the hospital, the lazy Sunday mornings spent laughing over burnt pancakes, the nights when they stayed up talking about their dreams for the future. Those moments felt so far away now, but they weren't gone. Not entirely. Leah's struggle with guilt. Leah lay awake in their bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, but her thoughts were deafening. She had replayed every choice, every misstep, every moment of weakness 1,000 times. She thought about the first time she'd met Alex, how he had made her feel safe and seen in a way no one else ever had. She thought about the vows they had exchanged, the promises she had broken. Her guilt was a constant weight pressing down on her chest. But beneath it was something else, a determination to make things right. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that Alex was worth it. That their family was worth it. She got out of bed and padded down the hallway to Ethan's room. Standing in the doorway, she watched him sleep, his small chest rising and falling with each breath. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I'm going to fix this. I promise." The breaking point. The next morning, Alex and Leah found themselves sitting across from each other at the kitchen table. The tension was thick, but there was a sense of urgency, as if both of them knew that this conversation could be the turning point. "I can't keep living like this," Alex said, his voice breaking the silence. Leah nodded. "I know. I don't know if I can forgive you," Alex continued. "But I don't want to give up. Not yet." Leah reached for his hand, her heart racing. "That's all I need, Alex. A chance." Alex pulled his hand away, his expression pained. "This doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And it doesn't mean I'll forget what happened. I don't expect you to," Leah said, tears streaming down her face. "I just need you to let me prove to you that I can be better. That I can be the wife you deserve." Message to the audience. Forgiveness is never easy. It's a choice, one that comes with its own set of challenges and doubts. But sometimes, it's the hardest choices that lead to the most profound growth. What would you do in Alex's position? Could you forgive, or would the betrayal be too much to bear? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that dive deep into the complexities of life and love. Some choices leave scars no matter which path you take,